They don't fear the Quran because of what it destroys. They fear it because of what it builds. Have you ever wondered why a book revealed in the deserts of Arabia over 1,400 years ago still shakes the halls of power, still transforms hearts, and still makes some people tremble at its mere recitation? This is not just a book. It's a force. In silence, that we are worthy of the kingdom, that we are brothers in disguise. That is a word of truth. If one speaks the truth, one speaks truth, in absence of other truth, then the truth of truth, in truth, speaks the truth, in truth. Stay with me, because in this video, we're going to uncover why they fear the Quran. Not for what it says on the surface, but for what it awakens deep within the soul. This isn't just about history, it's about power, purpose, and a message that refuses to be silenced. Watch till the end, and you'll see why the book that changed the world still has the power to change you. The Quran stands as a literary phenomenon that has captivated minds and stirred emotions for over 14 centuries. Its words, revealed in the Arabic language, possess a rhythm and resonance that transcend ordinary speech, invoking a sense of awe even in those unfamiliar with its meanings. Arabic poets and linguists of the 7th century, masters of language in their own right, were left speechless upon hearing its verses. They recognized immediately that what they were listening to was not merely the product of human creativity or poetic skill. It didn't follow the known rules of poetry or prose. It was something entirely unique. Its structure defied categorization, and yet it flowed with a coherence and majesty that penetrated the heart. Scholars across generations have attempted to imitate its style, replicate its cadence, or challenge its linguistic complexity, and all have failed. The Quran itself throws out a challenge to produce something like it, a single chapter even, but this challenge has remained unmet. This is not just about eloquence. It is about depth and precision. Every word in the Quran is meticulously placed. Its meanings unfold layer by layer, speaking to both the unlettered listener and the seasoned scholar. It operates on multiple levels: historical, spiritual, legal, moral, yet maintains perfect harmony throughout. This profound linguistic and rhetorical power has long caused unease among critics. They recognize that its influence does not stem from weapons or wealth, but from words. Words that move people. Words that awaken something within. Words that compel the reader to pause and reflect. This is why it is feared, not because it promotes violence or chaos, as often misrepresented, but because it speaks directly to the soul in a way that few texts can. It disrupts indifference. It penetrates defenses. It carries a force that can shake the foundations of inherited belief systems. Even those who do not believe in it cannot ignore its effect. In the modern world, where distraction is constant and truth is often buried beneath noise, the Quran's clarity stands out. Its verses are memorized by millions, recited in every corner of the earth, in every hour of the day. No book has achieved such reach, while maintaining such mystery. The power of its language is not bound by time, and that is precisely what makes it so feared by those who cannot control it. When the Quran was first revealed, it entered a world steeped in tribal warfare, injustice, idol worship, and moral confusion. Arabia at the time was a fragmented society where might dictated right, and where women, orphans, and the weak had no voice. But within just a few years of this book entering the hearts of men, everything began to change. It didn't come with swords or political campaigns. It came with verses. Verses that called people to rise above tribal loyalties and selfish desires. Verses that broke the chains of superstition and demanded the use of reason. Verses that taught that every soul mattered, that every action was recorded, and that justice was not the privilege of the strong, but the right of all. This book took a disjointed and backward society and turned it into a beacon of civilization. It instilled in people the concept of accountability, not just to rulers but to something far higher. It brought discipline to those who had known only chaos. It brought law to those ruled by impulse. The Quran transformed slaves into leaders, outcasts into reformers, and shepherds into scholars. Its guidance built the foundation of a society that prioritized learning, ethics, and purpose. Within one generation, people who had once buried their daughters alive became protectors of their families and builders of a global civilization. And that civilization went on to contribute to science, medicine, architecture, philosophy, and law, leaving a legacy that Europe would later borrow during its own Renaissance. This transformation was not the result of wealth, conquest, or political strategy. It was driven entirely by the power of belief, reshaped by words that stirred hearts and reordered priorities. This is precisely why the Quran is feared, because wherever it is truly embraced, it creates people who cannot be bought, souls who do not bow to fashion or falsehood. It produces clarity in a world addicted to confusion. It reorients the human being to something higher than worldly status or material success. And that kind of change terrifies those who rely on manipulation and division to maintain control. They know that the Quran builds a kind of human being that is unshakable, and that is why its message is resisted, distorted, and attacked. Because when it enters a heart sincerely, the world around that person begins to change. And the Quran has always been a threat to those who build their power on the backs of the weak. From the very beginning, its message shook the foundations of the elite, who thrived on injustice, arrogance, and corruption. It did not whisper quietly in the corner. It spoke boldly in the streets, confronting the false gods, the false systems, and the false security people placed in wealth, lineage, or status. It declared that no man is above the law, no ruler beyond accountability, and no soul can escape judgment. Such a message, by its very nature, unsettles those who benefit from systems built on inequality. When it was first recited in Mecca, the powerful didn't fear it because of violence. They feared it because it was dismantling the illusion of their superiority. It was liberating slaves by declaring their worth equal to their masters. It was restoring dignity to women by affirming their spiritual and moral agency. It was protecting the orphan, defending the poor, and calling the arrogant to humility. These were not just theological concepts. They were direct threats to a system designed to keep certain people at the top and others beneath them. And so the response was not intellectual, it was aggressive. They tortured, mocked, expelled, and tried to silence the voice that recited those verses. But the message spread, not because it promised luxury, but because it awakened something powerful. The human demand for truth and justice. This is why tyrants across history have feared the Quran, not because it calls for rebellion in the streets, but because it nurtures rebellion in the soul. It teaches that submission to falsehood, no matter how comfortable, is betrayal. It instills a deep resistance to being enslaved by man when one is already a servant of something greater. That kind of inner freedom terrifies oppressors. They cannot buy it. They cannot threaten it. They cannot contain it. It refuses to compromise truth for convenience. The Quran does not bend to political agendas or modern ideologies. It calls them all to account. This is the reason it is feared in boardrooms, courtrooms, and classrooms. Not because it spreads hate, but because it exposes lies. It lifts the veil on injustice, even when that injustice is dressed in the language of progress. It teaches people to speak the truth, even when their voice shakes. And when that voice carries the words of the Quran does not speak to the reader as a distant, passive narrative. It confronts directly. It asks questions that pierce through layers of distraction and comfort. It doesn't allow the soul to remain asleep. It asks, where are you going? What have you prepared for tomorrow? Do you think you were created without purpose? These are not questions that can be ignored. They demand reflection. They demand honesty, and for many that is exactly what makes the Quran so unsettling. It holds up a mirror to the heart and forces the individual to look beyond the surface, beyond the daily grind, and beyond the noise of the world. In a time when people are encouraged to numb themselves with entertainment, indulgence, and endless distractions, the Quran pulls them back to what matters. It exposes the emptiness of materialism, the fleeting nature of power, and the illusion of control. It brings every soul face to face with its Creator, not through abstract philosophy but through direct, unfiltered truth. This direct engagement is powerful. It leaves no room for arrogance. It challenges the one who thinks he knows, the one who thinks he's safe, the one who thinks he's in control. It cuts through pride, breaks illusions, and calls the soul back to its original purpose. The Quran doesn't ask for blind following. It calls repeatedly to reflection, to thought, to examination. It uses signs in the heavens, in the earth, in the self, all pointing to something greater. It appeals to reason and to conscience. But that appeal is dangerous to those who benefit from a thoughtless, passive society. A population that asks deep questions cannot be manipulated easily. A heart that seeks truth will not be satisfied with empty slogans or shallow pleasure. This is why the Quran is feared, not because it imposes force, but because it awakens force within the individual. It creates a mind that sees through deception and a heart that longs for something eternal. The Quran builds a person who does not run from hard truths, who does not hide behind excuses. It calls each person to rise, to grow, to confront their own flaws and to seek the higher path. In doing so, it produces individuals who are grounded, aware, and inwardly strong. That kind of person cannot be controlled by the currents of fashion or fear, and that is why the Quran remains the most powerful and the most feared voice in a world drowning in noise. The Quran stands alone in human history as a text that has remained unchanged from the moment it was revealed. It was preserved not by institutions, but by hearts. Millions have memorized it, letter for letter, word for word, generation after generation, from the deserts of Arabia to the farthest corners of the world. No other book, religious or otherwise, has enjoyed this level of protection, this level of purity, this level of divine attention. Its preservation is not only a sign of its truth, but also a direct threat to those who wish to control narratives. When a text cannot be altered, manipulated, or revised to suit the changing tides of ideology or power, it becomes a fixed point of truth in a world that constantly shifts. Throughout history, religious texts have been edited, rewritten, and updated to match the political needs or cultural trends of the time. Entire doctrines have been shaped not by original teachings, but by councils, empires, or personal agendas. The Quran, on the other hand, remains today exactly as it was revealed over 14 centuries ago. Every dot, every vowel, every pause, preserved with astonishing accuracy. That kind of permanence is unsettling to those who rely on flexibility to maintain control. It means there is a standard that does not move. It means there is a reference point that cannot be distorted. It means there is a truth that does not flinch in the face of power. This is why attempts to discredit the Quran always fall short. Critics cannot point to contradictions, historical errors, or gaps in preservation. They are left only with mockery or distraction, because the text itself is impenetrable. It does not rely on mythology or the fading memory of its followers. It is alive in their tongues, present in their homes, and carved into their hearts. And because it cannot be changed, it cannot be owned. It does not belong to any government, sect, or scholar. It speaks above them all. It judges all of them. And that kind of authority is terrifying to those who build their power on lies. The fear of the Quran is the fear of a truth that cannot be erased. A truth that has survived wars, colonization, propaganda, and distortion. A truth that speaks just as clearly today as it did in the cave where it was first revealed. And that unshakable, preserved truth remains a fire in the minds of those who seek control without accountability. The Quran is not a book of the past. It is a force in the present. It is not bound to museums or ancient shelves. It lives in the hearts of people across continents, cultures, and languages. It continues to change lives in the most unexpected places. Behind prison walls, in war zones, in suburban homes, on university campuses, in villages untouched by modern convenience. It reaches those who feel lost, those who feel broken, those searching for meaning in a world drowning in noise. And when it reaches them, it doesn't just inform, it transforms. It doesn't simply educate, it awakens. It pulls people from the depths of despair and gives them a compass, a voice, and a purpose. There are countless stories of individuals who were immersed in darkness, addiction, violence, arrogance, disbelief, and it was the Quran that pierced through their walls. They didn't change because someone forced them to, but because the words spoke directly to their soul. They found in it not just rules but healing, not just theology but direction. It became a light when everything else around them felt empty or false. That kind of transformation is not explained by emotion alone. It's deeper than inspiration. It's a revelation touching the fitra, the innate soul that recognizes truth when it finally hears it. This is why the Quran continues to be feared by those who want to control the narrative. Because it does not rely on wealth, power, or popularity to win hearts. It reaches the homeless and the wealthy, the educated and the illiterate, the young and the old. It does not discriminate, and once it enters a life, it rarely leaves it the same. It calls people to stand upright when others bow to pressure. It calls for integrity when lies are convenient. It births courage, clarity, and conviction in a time where confusion is the norm. Those who fear the Quran do not fear violence, they fear its clarity. They fear that someone might hear it and wake up. They fear that a person might realize they were made for more than consumption and conformity. Because when someone is changed by the Quran, they can no longer be controlled by society's illusions. They rise above trends, propaganda, and pressure. They begin to live for something higher, and that kind of person becomes a ripple in the world around them. The Quran still does that. Every single day, and that is what truly makes it feared. The Quran is not feared because it spreads darkness, but because it shines a light too bright to ignore. It speaks with unmatched power, unshakable truth, and unwavering clarity. It transformed deserts into centers of civilization, slaves into scholars, and fragmented tribes into a global brotherhood. It calls out injustice, demands accountability, and offers a purpose that no empire or ideology can rival. It is preserved without change, living without decay, and continues to break chains wherever it is embraced. The fear is not of its verses, but of the strength it gives to those who listen. It cannot be silenced, bought, or reshaped. And in a world that thrives on illusion, the one thing more terrifying than a sword is a truth that never bends. Thank you, message. Thank you all for lending your ears, your hearts, and your time. May we continue to seek clarity in a world clouded by confusion, and may truth always find a place in our hearts. Peace and blessings to you all.